Hey, good day, everybody. This is E. Marcel Pertut, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Inquirer Show. We're broadcasting this on December 21st, 2020. Hope all of you are well out there. Happy holidays. And we're on the week of Christmas. And actually, we're in a bunch of holidays going on. We've been in all of our Jewish brethren celebrating Hanukkah and other things like that. I know Kwanzaa's coming up within the next few days as you were listening to this show. The New Year is a holiday to many. Not necessarily myself, but Happy New Year if you're listening to us a little bit later than the recording of our show. But holiday season, there's a lot going on, a very active period in the world of sports. So very excited to be broadcasting to you here from Atlanta, Georgia. If you today's broadcast, we're going to discuss technical state of Georgia athletics. We're going to break down Georgia State and Georgia Tech signing days for football. We'll break down the original free kick portion of our show, which is on Atlanta United and Major League Soccer. United made a new hire over the past few days, a new manager. We were able to attend the presser of that, so I have audio from the presser and I have thoughts on the hiring. We'll also go into our Gridiron Blitz as we do every early week edition of our show, recapping the past week of the NFL. And then finally, the Miscellaneous Department, we'll touch on some news and notes around the world of sports we weren't able to get to earlier on in the show. But as always, if you want to follow everything that we're doing, head to the mothership, the sportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. If you listen to our show, you know the routine. Head on to the site and you'll get everything that we have going on. We also have social media platforms such as Twitter and Instagram. You search Sports Inquirer, that's all one word. Do a quick search on there and you'll see all of our updates and things that are going on. I'm starting to tweet a little bit more. I'm trying to get better in that engagement of Twitter and Instagram. Whenever I put stuff on the site, obviously I think I do a pretty solid job of putting it out there and showing it and presenting it. But I also don't want to over tweet or over Instagram, if that's a proper term, of every little thing that I have going on or every little, but I do have to be better with this. So we're starting to do some tweeting during contests and I'm getting better at it. But if you want to follow all of our stuff, go to our social media platforms and check that out. Go to our Facebook pages. We have two of them. You can either go to Sports Inquirer or the Sports Inquirer. Either one will take you to where you need to go. And then finally, subscribe to us on our other platforms, particularly YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes under the Sports Inquirer. Make sure you do go to those places. You can search, same deal. And every time we put a new show up, a new interview, anything along those lines, it goes right up there as well. So that's a really good way to check out everything that we have going on. Let's start with the technical state of Georgia athletics because that ties into college football. We're talking about some college basketball as well, but I think that's a good way to start off with everything going on because this is a very active week in college sports. We'll start with Georgia State football first and their signing day. Or before we get to their signing day, there are bowl bound. Actually, we're editing in the middle of our show. I may edit this out, may not, but screw it. We'll keep it going. We'll start with the bowl game. Yeah, let's start with the bowl game, and then we'll go into the early signing period. The Panthers are going to be in a bowl game on Saturday, December 20th, 6th, day after Christmas, in Mobile, Alabama. They're playing in a Lending Tree Bowl. They're going to face Western Kentucky from Conference USA. It's the fourth bowl bid in 6 years for Georgia State football, and they've won three of their last four games and finished the regular season this year in 2020 at 5-4, and are 4-4 in the Sun Belt Conference. So this is the second straight year that they're in a bowl game and third time in 4 years under head coach Shawn Elliott. And the Panthers are seeking their second bowl victory against the same Western Kentucky team that they defeated for their first bowl win, which was back in the 2017 AutoNation Cure Bowl, which was down in Orlando, Florida. And they won that contest 27-17. Western Kentucky comes into the contest 5-6, but they do have a winning record in Conference USA play at 4-3. Here is Coach Elliott discussing the bowl invitation and accepting it and playing in the contest.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great day to be a Georgia State Panther. As you know, we got the invitation to go to the 2020 Lending Tree Bowl in Mobile, Alabama against Western Kentucky. And what news it was. It was just an exciting time for our staff, our players, from everyone involved here to have an opportunity to go and compete with such an unusual season, to go out and have an opportunity to finish it up with a solid game against Western Kentucky. We're looking forward to the trip, and we're excited to start preparing and to really cap off what I think has been a pretty good season. When the name came up, Western Kentucky, I was like, that's kind of cool, got our first bowl win against them back in 2017, and here we are in my fourth season and our staff's fourth season, having the opportunity to go back and kind of do it all over again. So we're hoping for the same results, but we're just thrilled to be in this bowl and have the opportunity to compete against a West. We're playing a football season. I don't understand why we would go through the trials and tribulations to play a season without not having an opportunity to cap it off in a bowl game. So, I think we're all excited to go and have this opportunity. I think it's thrilling for our program. We know how important it is to have these opportunities. So, no, never did we.
All right, now Shawn Elliott about the bowl and taking the invitation. But also this week we had, last week, they had the early signing day, and the Panthers signed 14 players during the early signing day period. So that's a typical number of what they have in normal years. And he breaks down kind of how this year was different than in the past. But here's Coach Elliott about the signing day and what the team was able to accomplish.
A special day, adding 14 individuals to our roster in this, 2021 signing class for us. Like I said, 14 individuals, 10 defensive players and 4 offensive players. It's always an exciting time when you're preparing for a bowl game and having a signing day all in the same week. And, some people think it gets pretty hectic, but it's a pretty fun day around here. Got a lot of smiling faces and, like I said, just a great time to welcome in a new bunch of Georgia State Panthers. I believe we sent out 14 NLIs and we got 14 back. So that's a good sign. So very, very pleased with the depth that we've added on defense and the playmakers that we've added on offense and the 2 interior guys we've added on the offensive line. So, we're looking to move this program forward each and every day, but it all starts with these players, and we think we've got a great bunch.
Now, this year has been different for everyone involved in all walks of life with COVID-19 and the pandemic, and that there was no exception to that when it came to college football recruiting. Coach Elliott touched on this and how things were adjusted for the early signing period.
Well, you better have a staff that you trust, and we've got a great staff here. I trust in their communication ability and talking with the parents and the players of these student athletes and not selling Georgia State, not so much, but just becoming real comfortable in their relationships with myself and our staff. And they did a marvelous job. That's one of the things I think we benefited, to tell you the truth, from having this COVID, because I know in the spring, for myself, I was personally on more Zoom calls. When I say more Zoom calls, 4, 5, 6, 7 a day, and we were in constant contact with our recruits. And that was a big, big help for us. A lot of times these coaches get on the road in the spring and, they hit 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 high schools, and they're back in a car driving another hour. When this past spring, hey, they were sitting right there at home. We had the Zoom call set up. We had our entire staff on and we were, just clipping them off. So I just attribute the success of this class to our staff. Now we've got to go out and develop these guys to be the very, very best class that we could have signed. But that will be told in due time to see exactly how well they turn out. But like I said, I'm pleased with our staff and their efforts.
If you look at the list of the players that he signed, the majority of them were on the defensive end. And here was Coach Elliott discussing or talking about why that seemed to be.
Well, I mean, every year you have to evaluate your roster, evaluate your players, your staff, and your program in general. And, we had to bulk up that side of the ball. And to see the performance here late of our defense in the last 3 or 4 ball games of how they played and how the young men that we recruited prior to this have come on and stepped up to add some more playmakers to that side of the ball, some more speed, some more size. We've had a few inside linebackers, an outside linebacker or two. We just think progressing in that direction is what we need to do at this time. And that doesn't mean we're taking away from the offensive side. It just means we had a little bit more numbers on that side of the ball. But we're pleased to make that side of the ball very, very important and continue the trend upward in playing sound defense.
And you look at other teams in the state and in the state of Georgia, and there's been a big emphasis on recruiting the state of Georgia. We'll get to Georgia Tech in a moment, and University of Georgia. They have made it a priority to recruit the state of Georgia, and Georgia State's in the same deal. But if you look at their makeup, you see a lot of people from the Carolinas, from Florida, from Alabama, Tennessee, things along those lines. They stay in the Southeast, but they do get some Georgia signings as well. But a reporter asked them about that, the priority or the importance of recruiting the state of Georgia.
I think, everybody says, hey, Georgia is the hotbed. And certainly it is. There's great players in Georgia. We want to find the players that fits right for that's right for our program. If they're all from Georgia, it's fantastic. I mean, it certainly is. And I say this every year. I would love to sit here and sign. If we had 14 individuals from the state of Georgia that wanted to come and be a part of Georgia State, I would love for that to have been the case. So we're just happy to have the opportunity to get in any and every high school, whether it's in the state of Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, sign one out of North Carolina. I think our success and what we've done, the wins that we've had certainly gives us a foot in the door in a lot of high schools, and not just the high schools here in Georgia. And also, when you go defeat your rival, Georgia Southern, like we did, there's a lot of high school coaches out there that came from Georgia Southern. So, we get that door in there a little bit further. Sometimes they like to close it on us quick, but then they open that thing up for us.
Another change that we've seen over the past few years in recruiting is a transfer portal window. And you've seen a lot of players go into the window and out of it. And I asked Coach Elliott directly how that impacts his recruiting class.
The portal is something that everyone uses differently. You have to be real specific in what you're looking for. I know for myself and our staff, when we look into the transfer portal, we're looking for someone that has played a significant amount, and they've got their so-called resume on film. We're not looking to take a chance on a guy that, for whatever reason, wants to get out of a bad situation because he's not playing or he's gotten in trouble or something. And a lot of times that may be the case, but we're specifically, if we do target that scenario or go about that plan, we want to get a guy that has the proof on film and not just, is in there because he's got 3 years of eligibility and wants to be closer to home, because, that's not always the case. And a lot of times it's never the case. So we're looking for people that have actually put their resume on film, and that's the way we'll go about it.
And finally, I was able to speak with Coach Elliott about early enrollees. The way this typically works is that since players are signed right now in December, normally, if they graduate high school and take care of their paperwork and their credits, they can enroll early during the spring semester of the college year, and really before the spring semester before their first playing season of their freshman year. Things are different right now, and I asked them if the lack of in-class capabilities, and we don't really know what the practice schedule is going to be like for players and teams when they come back from winter vacations and after their bowl games are done. I asked Coach Elliott, does that impact or affect his early enrollee plan?
With everything going on, we typically have about 5 to 6 a year. I think we're going to have one this year. But with everything going on right now, with the uncertainty of, so many online classes and just the entire COVID situation, I think it, and it's hard for me to say because I'm not in their shoes, but if I were a high school senior, I might, be a little reluctant at that moving in early and getting to college with everything that's going on. I think staying safe is the most important thing, but we do have one individual, and we look forward to bringing him into campus on the campus in January.
And now it's Coach Elliott about the early signing day period and everything that took place there. Georgia Tech also participated in their early signing day period, and they signed 21 players overall, including 13 Georgia natives and 5 transfers. And 6 of those players were 4-star recruits, according to Rivals. So, in addition to the 6 4-star prospects that they signed in the past, they now have 13 of the 45 highest rated recruits in school history currently on the roster. So, they've done a very good job in that regard. You see some rankings that they're in the top 20, top 25 nationally. So, it's been a very solid effort by Geoff Collins and the Georgia Tech staff. We were able to speak with Coach Collins about the similar question with Coach Elliott about the impact that the COVID pandemic had on the recruiting class.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I thought our staff did a great job, and obviously Patrick Suttis helped organize all of it. We made sure we still did all of our background checks, did deep dives into getting to know every single one of our recruits that we sign. We are still a developmental program, and we want to make sure the guys have the right mindset and the right demeanor to come in here and help to let us maximize their potential. So getting to know them on a deep personal level is huge. Talking to the coaches, talking to the people around them, getting them on a lot of calls, a lot of FaceTimes, a lot of Zoom calls. That was instrumental into us selecting who we wanted to join our culture, to join our organization. But one of the cool things, Kelly, is we've got a young and innovative coaching staff that connects well regardless of the medium. And I think that was huge for us to establish those connections in a virtual world, over Zoom, over FaceTime. And that's not an easy thing to do, but I just applaud our staff for being able to do that at such a high level and make those kind of meaningful connections and continue to build and grow those relationships throughout this year. And then it ended up with us having a really good signing class.
We also discussed or talked with Coach Collins about recruiting the state of Georgia and how important that is for his recruiting plans.
Yeah, so I think there's 13 is the number in the class. And it starts right here. We talk about the 404 takeover, representing Atlanta, representing the ATL, just the high school coaching in the state of Georgia is at such a high level. The development, the demeanor, the priority that is high school football in the state of Georgia. We just have such a tremendous respect for all of the high school coaches, really good relationships with all of them. We've got an open door policy pre and post COVID that they know they can come here, talk ball, watch practice, watch film, build connections, build relationships. And those things are huge as you build a program. And obviously when you start from inside the city, inside the state, and then move on, that's the key to success, and especially the fertile grounds that is high school football in this great state.
As I mentioned, he has 5 transfers signed with the team this year and in this class, and with those transfers included, they put themselves in the top 20 nationally. Here's Coach Elliott about Coach Collins, excuse me, about the impact those transfers will have on the program.
Sure, absolutely. Just certain positions of need. And I think the thing that helped is 4 of them have multiple years of eligibility returning. And I think only 1 or 2 have a very short window, but I think they're at positions that can really upgrade, our roster, our program. So excited about those that are going to be here in the short term, and then also those that are going to be here long term as well. And one of the biggest pieces too, I think we've done a really nice job. The guys that we've brought in here as transfers, and Ryan Johnson, who's going to be returning, have come in here. They've understood the mindset. They've understood the culture. They've helped elevate those kind of things, which that's not always easy to do, especially when you're here for a short window of time. And I'm just proud of Ryan and guys like Tyler, Jared Suthers, who have done that and done that very well and have helped build this culture and strengthen it. And it's been a positive force.
So those are our discussions with Coach Collins about the recruiting and the signing day and what the team is planning to do. So that is very interesting to see what is happening there. We'll move on to the original free kick portion of our show, and this topic will be Atlanta United. It is agreed to a 2-year contract with Gabriel Heinze to become the 3rd head coach in club history. His background includes a long tenure as an upcoming coach in Argentina, and most recently at Vélez Sarsfield. He led the third youngest team in the top Argentinian league to a third place finish. So he has a lot of experience in that regard. His tactical style, well, we'll get into the tactics, but you're looking at a coach that really is more in line with Tata Martino and less in line with Frank de Boer. Obviously, Gabby is not, and that's he goes by Gabby or Gabriel. He's not doesn't have the coaching pedigree that Tata Martino had when he first joined Atlanta United. So it's not fair to put him in that box or that category, but similar tactics. A lot of pressing, a lot of aggressive defense, a lot of fast paced movement, especially in the midfield. And we saw success Atlanta United had with that style of play under Tata Martino. Obviously, winning MLS Cup, putting itself in position to win the Supporters Shield, and had a lot of success under Tata Martino. But obviously, he moved on to the Mexican national team as their manager. Frank de Boer came in. He did win a U.S. Open Cup and Campeones Cup, so it wasn't like he was a total a failure in Atlanta United, but we all saw that at the beginning of this 2020 calendar year, especially the MLS is back tournament, things were not going well. A change was made, and Stephen Glass became the interim manager and led the team to close to a playoff bid. They did not make the postseason, but he concluded the regular season and the Champions League for Atlanta United, and they moved on. I said to Gabby, and we were able to speak with Carlos Bocanegra, the technical director of Atlanta United, about the hiring.
Look, it's always a case where we have our idea on how we would like to play. We have our player profile, and those are clear, but those need to also match up when you're speaking with coaches and their style and their profile of player, what they think can do well here in Atlanta, and we think can do well here in Atlanta. So it's been really good. Like I said, Gabby did a real thorough analysis. It was great when we were down there in person. We got to really dive in deep on the players, talk about the roster, positions we need to strengthen, and the nice part was it was very aligned, which is great. So we've been having a lot of conversations, a lot of communication, and like he said earlier, kind of there's a lot of stuff on the table, but we've been discussing that together. Obviously, we want to give the coach the best chance to be successful here, and with players that fit into our profile and the club's philosophy, as well as the coaches, so he has a chance to be successful. So that's been really positive. He got his Team Argentina Juniors promoted when he was with them, and then with Vélez, took them from a position where they weren't doing so well in the table and built them up to qualify for some of the South American competitions. So I think, when you look at managers, everybody comes with a different level of experience and background and what they've done. But, for us, the key thing was important on how we're going to look. Does the style of play, and I keep saying that, look, Gabby has his own style and he can explain that himself. But when you do the analytics and when you have, the eye test, when you visually watch the way we would like to look at Atlanta United, that very much aligned. So, that was very important. We hope to improve, and we know Gabriel will do a great job and do everything he can to improve. But let's give him some time to implement his tactics, his ideas with the team, and stamp his authority, so to speak, on our group. But that's not something that we were concerned about at all, Joe. If he's won titles per se or not.
And here is Gabby on why he chose Atlanta United when obviously a manager of his pedigree and his age had some options. And this is why he chose Atlanta United.
En primer lugar, esto hace varios meses que hemos empezado conversaciones con el presidente y con Carlos, y una de las cosas más importantes fue el respeto de las dos partes, el respeto del tiempo que yo le he pedido a ellos para hacer un análisis como corresponde. Y bueno, desde ahí hemos empezado a elaborar todos estos análisis. Y nada, cuando le di la palabra a ellos hace 2 meses y medio atrás, le he dicho que yo no considero correcto estar viendo o analizando otras propuestas hasta que este análisis con el Atlanta United iba por buen camino o mal camino. Entonces, he seguido hablando con ellos y bueno, y después se ha decidido.
The process started months ago when I was in touch with Carlos and also the club president. And one of the important things throughout the process was the respect that I received from both parties. And I asked them for time to be able to fully analyze the proposal. And they allowed me to do that. So that was important for me, that I had the chance to fully analyze, everything and then be able to come to a decision.
The question was brought up also about the tactics, as I mentioned earlier, about his approach to a team and what he'd like to see come from them. I didn't ask this question, but here is what he said about the tactics.
Con el tiempo, muchas cosas de muchos entrenadores, pero lo más importante para mí es hacer lo que uno siente y lo que uno está capacitado. Estoy lejos de llevar una filosofía de otros entrenadores. Sí que es verdad que he aprendido de ellos, pero bueno, lo que uno hace es lo que realmente siente.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I don't like to use the word tactics. I prefer to talk about the positioning of the players on the field. And I'm someone who has learned different things from a lot of different coaches. But I think the most important thing for the players is that they feel it and they're capable on the field. But I'm far from having the philosophy of one coach, just different ideas that I've gathered. And I think, as I said, the most important thing is for the players to have the ability.
And Gabby is currently in Argentina with everything going on with the pandemic and visas and travel restrictions and things along those lines. And so this is what Carlos Bocanegra said about him coming to the United States and when we can expect that to happen.
Earlier, obviously, the visas and the paperwork and immigration, that's something we're working on now, trying to get them into the country. So, we're not sure exactly the date. We've been given the date of January 25th of the start of preseason. So we're trying to work backwards from that. And then, yes, we've got the coaching staff kind of all buttoned up and how we're going to do that for next year. But I think we'll probably look to announce that maybe the following week. I'm not sure exactly when the communications department is looking to get that out.
Atlanta United did receive some good news earlier this week as well, as they will be participating in the 2021 Socia Bank CONCACAF Champions League. The federation announced, said earlier, and they approved the U.S. Soccer Federation's request for Atlanta to be included as the current holder of the U.S. Open Cup, and that's the Open Cup did not conclude this year, so that means with everything going on, which means that they are still technically the title holder of that competition. So this is the third consecutive year that Atlanta will be in the Champions League after qualifying in both 2019 and 2020. And they're able to make those tournaments due to winning MLS Cup and the US Open Cup. And as of we don't know what the calendar is going to be, but it tends to be we have a championship coming up, I think tonight. No, actually not yet, the 21st. It includes LAFC. And for bookkeeping purposes, let's see. Let's see, the matchup is, where is it at? Trying to find it for you. But I know, but as I said, it's LAFC is in it. They beat Club America in an upset to reach the final. And so it's going to be a very interesting contest there. But point is that we don't know when that might start up as early as January or February after they finish up the 2020 version of it. But very intrigued to see what happens there with Atlanta United. Now let's move on to the Gridiron Blitz and have my NFL thoughts on everything that is going on. As I said, we still have some football action over the next day or so, but I will break down some of my thoughts on the NFL and what I saw this past week. Seattle Seahawks, they're now in the playoffs for the third consecutive year. They're able to defeat Washington 20-15. I like what I'm seeing from the Seahawks. Granted, they only scored 20 points. Washington's a very good defensive team. The offense issues, but defensively they can bring it. I like what I'm seeing from Seattle because they're finally getting a good running game. We talked so much about Russell Wilson earlier in the year, and he's had a very good year. I still think he could be an MVP conversation, top 4 or 5, but he also was turning over the ball quite a bit. When you run the ball and they have Carlson back, and you're getting some other contributions, that is very big for them. But you're also getting to see some good defense as well. Jamal Adams, I know that standout performance. I still think Green Bay and New Orleans may be a tick better than them, but they are right there in the conversation to be a Super Bowl contender coming out of the NFC. Buffalo defeated Denver 48-19 on Saturday night to clinch the AFC East for the first time since 1995. You got to look at that team as we've talked so much about Kansas City, and rightfully so. And we'll get to the Chiefs. They're a weekly feature on our NFL Spotlight. And Pittsburgh, who's in the playoffs for once again, uh, they only have one loss on the season. Those two teams have been discussed quite a bit, and understandably so. Buffalo, maybe because it's Buffalo, and we've seen New England win that division so many times, and they kind of get overshadowed. But Buffalo's right there as a Super Bowl contender. They can run the ball, they can pass the ball now with Josh. When I say run the ball, that includes Josh Allen, who you have to put in your MVP conversation. Stephon Diggs gives them the number one option on the offensive end. That's very big. And I said they have a good balanced offense. Their defense is solid under McDermott, who who could be in coach of the year contention. So they're going to play well defensively. Buffalo is right there as a team that can make a run towards a championship. So they were able to clinch the AFC East and win that. We've said this stat so many times before, and I'll repeat it. And now we're starting to get towards the historical mark of it. There have been 40 games in which a team has overcome a deficit of at least 10 points to win a contest this season. That's the most through week 15 in NFL history. And we had 8 times this year in which a team has overcome a 17-point deficit to win. And we had that happen with the Tampa Bay Bucks, overcame a 17-point deficit to defeat Atlanta 31-27 this past Sunday. I watched that contest because I'm here in Atlanta. That's where we're based. And I was on TV. And I have a lot more free time or home time in my life. I'll put it that way. I'm doing well, but I have a lot more time to watch TV and sports, which is good, but it is what it is. Anyway, you look at the first half of that contest, you would have thought it was vintage Matt Ryan MVP campaign. No Julio Jones, but he was moving the ball well. He even ran for a first down. Calvin Ridley had 150 plus yards receiving at the end of the contest. He was playing really well. Gage was getting some catches. It was a dominant performance in the first half for Atlanta. And Tampa was just going through the motions. Brady wasn't accurate with his throws. They weren't getting good running out of Jones. But the second half came. It was just a very, very different story. And Tampa was able to overcome the deficit, and the game winner ended up being a big touchdown pass from Tom Brady to Antonio Brown. He got involved in the contest. I think Tampa, they're very schizophrenic and just very inconsistent. Maybe that's the better term. When they're playing at their best in like that second half, and granted it's Atlanta, and Atlanta has a lot of issues, but if they play like that, they could be a contender. But too often we've seen them play like they did in the first half, and how they played against New Orleans this year, and things like that, and how they've played against Kansas City. We've seen all of those type of contests, and not enough of that second half effort. but you also saw them protect Tom Brady much better in the second half. In the first half, Atlanta came out very aggressive defensively, a lot of blitzes. You saw Keanu Neal get some hits on Brady. A lot of that was going on. But in the second half, they made protection adjustments, and Brady was able to stay in the pocket, have a cleaner pocket to throw from, and he played much better. But Tampa became another team that overcame a major deficit to emerge with a victory. I'm not too concerned what I saw from Kansas City in their 32-29 win over New Orleans. I think the bar is set so high for the Chiefs, and understandably so. Defending Super Bowl champions, transcendent quarterback, offense with all pros, first team all pros at tight end and receiver. You have a solid offensive line. Your running backs, you have a former MVP candidate and all pro in Le'Veon Bell, maybe a rookie of the year in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You add all of those weapons together and you think this team should be averaging 45 points a game. They're still having maybe not the best efforts and still getting up to 30 plus points a contest on off days. And we've seen that 2 weeks in a row now. We saw that last week and then we saw it this week against New Orleans. But Pat Mahomes still with not his best effort, 92 passer rating, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 254 yards passing. And I'm sure if you got him in a private moment, and even as an observer, you'd probably say he had an average game. For some of the guys, that's a career effort. For Hall of Fame guys that are currently playing and Pro Bowlers, that'd be your best game of the season. Yet for him, it maybe was one of his worst. And so you just look at that number and 21 career games with at least 3 TD passes. So now he's tied with Kurt Warner for the second most through his first 4 NFL seasons. Only Dan Marino had more at 27. I think you're seeing with the Chiefs right now. Now they can't necessarily be bored because they're still fighting for that first overall seed in the AFC, and that's very important for everybody. Because remember, this year there's only one bye per conference. There's an additional playoff team. There's 7 playoff teams, but only one bye. So you really want to get that bye. I think it's more important in the NFC because of home field advantage in Green Bay and playing in that cold weather. I know the fans aren't there, but still, you put them in that cold weather, in that element. Drew Brees throwing balls in 20-degree conditions with 30-mile-an-hour winds. That's going to be very, very tough for New Orleans. I know they win a lot of road games and they run the ball with Kamara, but I think that if the Saints can play indoors in their dome, they're so much better than they are on the road. I think Kansas City can win in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh can win in Kansas City, I guess, sure. But I think that you still want that bye, though. You want to rest your body. And you don't want to travel, too. We talk about, and that's what I've heard some people say, home field advantage doesn't matter because of the lack of crowds and the current conditions that we're in. I disagree with that. I think that if you could play at home, not only do you get some crowd noise, because you are starting to see some fans come enter contests. Now, I'm watching the English Premier League right now, Burnley and Wolves, and they've had some, if you're globally watching the news, they've had a new outbreak or kind of a new strain of the coronavirus, and they had fans in attendance at games, but they've started limiting that now, where there are no fans in a lot of these locations. We may see that happen here in the United States, where we've had fans attend contests, but now I know we have the vaccine and everything like that, but if they don't allow fans or make a change to it, by the time you listen to the show, it may be different. But point being is that even if it's 2,000 fans, it's more than nothing. And that still matters, I think, when you attend a contest or if you're playing on the road. And as I mentioned, when you have a place like Green Bay with the weather conditions, that could be very interesting. So why I say all that to say, Kansas City still wants to have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and that's why they can't get bored and can't get lazy. And I think that's where you're starting to see us grade them at such a high level than other teams, but they are still the team to beat in the entire NFL, and we saw that last night. Baltimore is another team that we've gotten a lot about because of all the AFC teams that I've mentioned, But Lamar Jackson, 3 touchdowns, passes, 243 yards passing, and a 40-14 win over Jacksonville. He now has 19 career rushing touchdowns, so third most by a quarterback through his first 3 years in the NFL. Only Cam Newton had 28, and Josh Allen currently has 25 rushing touchdowns. And we've talked about Buffalo and Josh Allen, how great he's been this year. But Lamar Jackson's a guy who we haven't, I don't say necessarily forgotten about, but remember this time last year, unanimous MVP, transcendent, thought he was changing the game, and then that Tennessee Titans playoff contest took place. And I think what we've seen from our expectations from Lamar Jackson, we see all the numbers, we see all of the highlights, but we're waiting for the postseason, waiting for the playoffs. And that's a fair judgment or criticism because he has struggled in playoff games in his career. But I still think we need to appreciate what we're seeing in the regular season. And he has another chance to be a guy to rush for another 1,000 yards. He has 828 rushing yards so far this season with 2 games to go. And he's only Michael Vick and him are the only quarterbacks with 2 seasons of at least 800 rushing yards. And he's not going to get to 1206, but he could be the first guy, man, to have 2,000-yard rushing seasons as a quarterback. That's a tremendous mark. I don't care what era you're looking at. So give him some recognition and some intrigue. Speaking of teams that deserve recognition or things I was intrigued by, that was a fun Arizona-Philadelphia contest. The Cards ended up winning 33-26. Kyler Murray, 406 passing yards, 3 TDs, 1 TD pass each to Hopkins and to Larry Fitzgerald. That was a very big performance by him. He has right now 26 passing TDs and 11 rushing TDs. So he joins Cam Newton as the only quarterback with at least 25 and 10 in a single season. And he still has 2 games to go. Excuse me. So you look at all of that and you think, man, he was the dominant guy. He was the main story of the contest. Not necessarily. Because you look at Jalen Hurts from Philadelphia, rookie quarterback, 338 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. He also rushed for a TD. First rookie quarterback in the Super Bowl era with at least 3 passing TDs and a rushing TD in his first career road start. And we'll have plenty of time to discuss the Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts scenario and what Philadelphia is going to do. I will say this. Doug Peterson needs to stop playing games and saying, I don't know who's going to be the starter for the next game. Jalen Hurts has earned the right to be the starter for the rest of the regular season. They only have 2 games left. They're probably not going to be in the playoffs, even though it's the NFC East. Lord knows what can happen in that division. But I still think you just name him the quarterback. I know the deal with Carson Wentz and his money and how much money he's owed over the next few years. And he's supposed to be the franchise quarterback and all those things. And quarterback is a sensitive position. You don't want to just throw him away because you may need him later on this season. Jalen Hurts may get hurt, no pun intended, or he may get injured. And you need for Carson Wentz to go back out there and play. So you don't want to just say, oh, we hate Carson Wentz, he's terrible, and all of a sudden you need to use him. I'm not saying that. But just stop playing games. Jalen Hurts has played 2 very solid games as a starter. He even had some good moments as a back and coming in as a reserve in the Green Bay game a few weeks ago for Philadelphia. But I still was impressed by what I saw from Hurts. Obviously, it's only 2 games, so let's not put him in can. But I will say that he gives that team another level of dynamic skill sets in that quarterback position. And plus, he does not turn the ball over. That's very, very big. And that's what we saw Carson Wentz. He was a turnover machine. Most turnovers of any quarterback in the NFL over the past few years, whether it was interceptions or fumbles. If you don't turn the ball over and still put up all those numbers, you're going to put your team in a very good position to win. So that's why you have to be very intrigued by what we saw from him. I'll go back to the Tampa and Atlanta game because I'm looking at the statistics and do have to acknowledge them. Tom Brady, 390 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. I said it was a tale of two halves. I think 340 of those passing yards came in the second half. So first half, he was not looking very good at all. And the second half, he played very, very well. And now he has now 19 career games with at least 375 passing yards and 2 TDs. Only Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees, and Peyton Manning have more than him. And so, I mean, Brady is moving up the charts of every offensive statistic you can for a quarterback. And then Matt Ryan, 356 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he lost. And it was a weird game for Atlanta because, as I mentioned in the first half, he was playing the best he's maybe has looked all season. Second half, not so much. I went on a good 2-3 minute rant last week, or I was looking back at last week's games, and said that after their loss at the Chargers of Los Angeles, and I said it's time to move on from Matt Ryan. And I still believe that. And it's not because Ryan's necessarily a bad quarterback and cannot find a spot to play somewhere else in the NFL. But him in Atlanta, it's time to move on. Atlanta's not going to win anything with him here. They need an overhaul. They need a reset. And as I mentioned, he'll get the number retired. He'll be in the Ring of Honor or the whatever it's called, whatever Atlanta wants to give it. He'll get the red jacket. He may even be a Hall of Famer in the all time in the NFL. I don't think so, but he puts up more numbers. Maybe he gets a championship somewhere else. You never know. I doubt it. But there's no shame in moving on from a quarterback and moving on, doing something else. We saw that with the Chargers with Phillip Rivers last year. He had a very good run there, similar deal. He'll have the number retired. He'll get the big ceremony when he's finished playing. But they had to move on, and they drafted Justin Herbert, and the Chargers are in a much better place now than they were this time last year. The Falcons, I don't know if they'll be as lucky to get a quarterback of Herbert's quality, but they're going to be picking in the top 6 or 7 at worst if they lose their next 2 games. So they'll have a chance to pick a quarterback, whether it's, I doubt that Fields and Lawrence will be there, but maybe they look at a Mac Jones from Alabama or a Kyle Trask from Florida, maybe the BYU quarterback. They have some choices. There's also the guy from North Dakota State, Lance. So they have choices at quarterback if they want to go that route. And that's where, if they are in the top 5 or 6, you need to take a quarterback. There's no doubt about that. But I still think that I want to acknowledge Ryan and his good offensive numbers, but it's time to move on. Another sneaky team in the AFC is Tennessee. They're able to defeat the Detroit Lions 46-25 last week or yesterday. Ryan Tannehill, 3 touchdown passes, no interceptions. He also rushed for 2 touchdowns in the victory. But let's talk about Derrick Henry, 147 rushing yards and a touchdown. He is on pace. It's going to be very tough for him to get to 2,000 yards, but right now he leads the NFL with 1,540 rushing yards, and he has 16 rushing TDs. So I'm shortchanging him. That was he had last year at 1,500 rushing yards, or 16 rushing TDs in 2019. This year, he's at 1,679 rushing yards and 15 rushing TDs. So only Shawn Alexander, Terrell Davis, and Larry Johnson have done those in consecutive seasons, the 1,500 rushing yards and 15 rushing TDs. So as I said, he is less than 400 yards away from getting to 2,000. I don't think that's going to happen, but you have to respect those numbers. And if I did my MVP voting right now, I think I'd have him number 3. I think I'd have Mahomes number 1, Aaron Rodgers 2, and then he'd be my number 3. And I would not be necessarily insulted with an argument that he's number 1, because you look at Mahomes, and the superlatives are already there for him, but you look at the talent around him. Now he's a quarterback; he's the pilot of that talent, but he's a quarterback, so he gets credit for that. But he's playing with some other beastly players. Aaron Rodgers is an intriguing one himself. I know he only had 1 passing TD in their victory over Carolina this past week, so the numbers didn't pop out. But you look at the touchdown interception ratio, what he's leading the Packers to, maybe the best record in the NFC. and his weapons. Now I know he does. He has some. He has Devontae. He has Adams at receiver and Jones at running back. So he's not like he's playing with a bare cupboard. But you look at what he's working with. I would say Green Bay and Kansas City have more offensive talent than the Titans do. And that's no disrespect to Tannehill and to Brown, their receivers. They have some good receivers, but I think Derrick Henry sets the tone maybe more than any other player in the NFL for his team. And they're a winning team right now. They're putting themselves in a very good position to be in the playoffs. You add all of that up, Henry has to be in your MVP conversation. He's definitely be an all pro. He might be offensive player of the year. We'll get to our awards in the next week or two. But I could argue he's the best offensive player in the NFL. It's a fun conversation to have. But Henry really impressed me what he was doing. And let's conclude the show with the miscellaneous department, some quick hitters in other realms of the world of sports. Army getting screwed out of a bowl appearance really disappointed me. 9-2 campaign for the United States Military Academy, and they can't find a way to get into a bowl. But we talked with the college football. Look, I know Notre Dame lost by a big margin against Clemson in the ACC championship game, but you knew Notre Dame. They came to that game undefeated. They beat Clemson earlier in the year. They were going to be in the playoffs. Alabama, that I'm 39, and I mean I started college at Vanderbilt back in 1999. So I'm not going to be able to go back to the 60s and 70s or talk great about Bo Jackson and Herschel Walker and all those guys. I mean, I've seen the videos. I could read the statistics and everything like that. And we just saw LSU last year with maybe the best offense that we've seen in SEC history. If you look at the numbers, you can make an argument for that. But this Alabama offense is ridiculously special. When you have Smith at receiver, who could be a Heisman winner, you have Harris at receiver. At running back, who any other year would be kind of similar to like a Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram year. You'd be looking at him as a Heisman winner. But no, we got the quarterback as well, Mac Jones. The defensively, you look at the numbers, they give up a lot of yardage, yes. So they're not going to be in that discussion of best defense of all time for SEC teams. But man, as far as a modern era over the past 10 or 15 years, I find it very hard to find a team that's this good. They are dominant right now. So them being the number one seed is fine by me. Clemson, you know when Trevor Lawrence came back, and if he can get back into form, any semblance of himself, Clemson was going to be a major player, and they are. They're a tremendous team. Ohio State being number 3, it's been a weird Big Ten year. Yes, they didn't play as many games as their contemporaries, and that's where you're looking at Texas A&M and even a Cincinnati. And by the way, Cincinnati, they can't even crack the top 6. Look, I know that there's not much love for the non-Power 5 conferences, but man, Cincinnati has been dominant all year. They beat a very solid Tulsa team in the AAC championship game, yet they can't crack the top 6 in the rankings by the committee. Now they're in a Power 6 bowl or New Year's 6 bowl. They're going to play Georgia in the Peach Bowl, so they weren't snubbed completely. But man, no love at all. And Texas A&M, look, I know they had a nice run at the end of the year, but then the one loss was to Alabama. But we saw them struggle against Vanderbilt. We saw them lose to a 3. They owned their best win. It's probably against a 3-loss Florida team. Florida is a very good 3-loss team, but still, that's a 3-loss squad. I wasn't mad at them not being in the playoffs. But the point is, you look at the top 4 of those rankings, you knew Notre Dame was not going to be eliminated from that because it's a TV show. Notre Dame is a national brand, similar to Ohio State. Ohio State, yes, they had their major struggles against Northwestern. And man, I don't know if it was rust or something was off with Justin Fields, but that's the worst game I've seen him play at Ohio State. He didn't look good at all. And I know we had maybe the Indiana game earlier in the year. He had his struggles as well, but it's just been an odd off year for him and for that entire Ohio State team. I'm saying this, and they went undefeated and won the conference championship. But I just think that they were going to find a way to get them into the playoffs, and that's the top four. It's probably going to be Alabama and Clemson. Alabama, Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a solid team. They have good line play on both ends, but Alabama's so dynamic. They're going to be a major problem for Notre Dame. I think Ohio State, they still have talent. Now, their defense is not as good as it's been over the past few years. And I think Clemson could take advantage of that. But I still think, yeah, you have Justin Fields, a dynamic player. You have Trey Sermon. I see all these Georgia guys. Trey Sermon went to the Sprayberry, which is in Marietta, Georgia. And Justin Fields went to Harrison, which is in Kennesaw, Georgia. All these Georgia guys putting in work for Ohio State. Very interesting to see. We saw Trey Sermon with 200-plus yards rushing in that victory over Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game. So I think you get him going. And if Justin Fields can find his accuracy and play a little bit better, they could be a good contest for Clemson. But as I think Clemson's on a mission right now, especially when it's the last games for Lawrence and Travis Etienne and a lot of the guys that are on that roster. I think they can handle Ohio State, and we'll get Alabama, Clemson, coin flip. But I think it'd be very surprising if we don't see Alabama winning the national championship. We have a few days to get to those games and to preview them a little bit deeper. But I just wanted to say that and get that out of the way. But yeah, Army, they finished 9-2 on the season. And yes, they're supposed to be in the Independence Bowl, but that game was canceled for COVID reasons. They couldn't even get into the Armed Services Bowl. But I look at Kentucky, 4-6, going to the Gator Bowl. Tennessee, 3-6, they're going to the Liberty Bowl. 3-7, Arkansas is going to be in the Texas Bowl. Mississippi, 2-7, and they're going to be in that same Armed Forces Bowl that Army could not get in. And 2-8, South Carolina is going to be in the Gasparilla Bowl. And the only reason we know that they're going to be in these bowls are conference tie-ins. But man, there has to be an adjustment for this year. I know you can let teams with losing records into bowls, and even these Mississippi and South Carolina, what benefit do these? I know you say, hey, the kids get to play one final game, you get some new coaches in there, and I know you notice these games. Arkansas, Mississippi, South Carolina all have first-year coaches or are going to have a new coach in the South Carolina case. So I know they want to get the extra practice time in and everything like that. But also, these guys have been through a lot physically and mentally. You would think you just want to go home and send them in there and do that regard. But Army, 9-2, not being in a bowl game, very weird. I think they'll find their way into a bowl because I think one of these teams are going to opt out at some point. And you talk to Jeff Monken, their head coach, they'll go to any bowl, anywhere, anytime, typical Army attitude. I think they'll find their way into a bowl game. But this just puts a highlight on the weird state of bowl games and the contracts and just the way things are negotiated. And you're seeing big business show itself in a big way. All right, that concludes today's show. Thanks for listening to our broadcast. As always, follow us on thesportsinquirer.net, and that'll be a great way to find all the things that we are doing in the world of the Sports Inquirer. Also, Twitter and Instagram, look up Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. Facebook, you go to The Sports Inquirer. And finally, subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes under The Sports Inquirer. Until next time, good fight, good night, and be safe.